Today's mind map is titled Presupposition. Imagine if this were true, which I borrowed from Neuro-Linguistic Programming, which we're going to tie into today's Neville conversation. Before we do that, we want to stimulate this conversation with a clip from one of my favorite Neville lectures, The Coin of Heaven.
Now, there is a work that came out in the first century, just about the time that our evangelists were gathering together our Gospels. It's called the hermetic. And in this work, today we have a translation in 4 volumes by Walter Scott. He said there are 2 gifts that God gave to man alone and to no other mortal creature. These are mind and speech. And with these gifts, these are equivalent to immortality. If a man uses these gifts rightly, he will differ in nothing from the immortals. And when he sheds his body, they will be his guides. And by them, he will be taken into the troop of the gods and into the souls of those who have attained to bliss.
So again, in this clip, he refers to the Hermetica, in which the last video we spoke of Hermes Trismegistus and the association between William Walker Atkinson potentially writing the Kybalion, which is stated to contain a condensation of certain Hermetic principles. He calls it in the book the 7 Hermetic Principles. As I track back the origins of personal development, I start to go into the early 1900s, the New Thought work, such as the work from James Allen, William Walker Atkinson. If we go even further back in history, we start to go into the parallels between the Hermetic philosophy in relation to alchemy, which is about the internal purification, to purify ourselves within. We can also relate this to self-realization or association back to the divine. We see then in what we discussed in the last video, the fusion of how everything was once considered one, and then through our internal separation thought processes, we begin to separate these elements. And what we will experience on this journey of self-realization and applying this information is not only bringing forth the success that we desire, but also the internal unification, seeing things as one, seeing the journey and valuing the journey as much as the destination. And all of this, in relation to the clip, is happening via the 2 gifts, speech and mind. And by speech, we're referring to inner speech. So what do we do? Well, let's reflect on this quote here from Neville. He says, "So I appeal to you to use your time and your thoughts wisely by investing them rather than spending them." And you can start now, this very moment, to invest your time, invest your thought. And in the not distant future, you'll get the fruit of the investment. For to invest is to expect returns on your equity. And you have equity in the ability to think, and to think in terms of images, think in terms of thoughts. And you have time, so you can actually take it now and invest it. So what we want is to invest our thoughts and the images that we hold in mind to be related to our vision, our goal, what we desire to see brought forth. This is the journey to the realization of our vision. And what we want to do to further emphasize this is understand ourselves as things show up, like the alchemists would do, and study the aspects within ourselves and make the change within ourselves. And as a result, we change to reflect accordingly, both the vision and a harmonious journey to the realization of our vision. One of the tools modern day, we have it, is neuro-linguistic programming. And what we can do is work with these NLP presuppositions, which are a set of assumptions, which we can incorporate into our lives, either personally or professionally. And what you'll find is that those that, let's say, have studied neuro-linguistic programming and are quite competent, the practitioners, work with and live by these areas. So I want to discuss them because I believe that these assumptions hold the key to maintaining an ideal state of mind in relation to yourself, in relation to others. Neville says, know what to do. Carry on an inner conversation from the premise of the wish fulfilled, and then persist in that assumption. If I, this night on my bed, if I keep the story before me, as the 4th chapter of Psalms tells me, the 4th Psalm, commune with your own heart upon your bed, and then be silent. Commune in what sense? Carry on a dialogue. What dialogue? From the premise of my wish fulfilled. So we have a desire, and we imagine and assume it as done. Upon reflection, we realize that reality has changed to bring forth our vision. And what we want to do is recognize and maintain this state of mind that is reflective of the vision. And we'll tie it into the presuppositions in a moment. And to emphasize this, he refers to the journey here, because we did the act, which is the end. And as we go along this journey, we are doing just that. We go along the journey to the end. He says, if you are riding a streetcar, you're riding on a bus, don't idle the time. Close your eyes to the obvious, it's not altogether attractive, and carry on your inner dialogue and invest that time. By the time you get to your destination, you've invested wisely between getting on the bus and getting off. If it's only 20 blocks away, and you've spent that time in a very wise manner, and you've actually used the coin of heaven. He gave you the coin of heaven. So we're working with speech and mind. And what we want is to have these presuppositions, again, which are assumptions. And we want to carry on the inner dialogue from perhaps these assumptions here. So let's go through them. Number 1, respect for the other person's model of the world. So as we go through this journey of self-realization and understanding ourselves and evolving aspects as far as inner conversation goes to be more affirmative to our vision, we may start to notice that other people might not see reality from the same perspective. If we identify with what we are assuming to be true from the perspective of friction in relation to them, we'll find ourselves being confused. So what we want to do is accept that there are different models, different maps, different paradigms of reality. And what we are looking to do is maintain true to the paradigm that is one and in harmony with the vision. For example, one might say, I realize that people have different perspectives on reality, but all contribute to my vision, and I contribute to their vision because all is one vision. Rather than carrying on imaginal arguments with the person, we create imaginal harmony-based inner dialogues, conversation, and imaginal acts throughout the day, thus allowing us to maintain that state of mind of harmony. Number 2, the meaning of the communication is the response you get. Now, this is why I'm a fan of direct response marketing, selling, because whatever response you get is revealing to us about ourselves. What are we assuming? What are we interpreting about the value that we provide, about others that we relate to? And the interpreter is ourselves. We are the only interpreter. Certainly, I can suggest things to you. However, at the end of the day, you are interpreting it from the perspective of the conscious or subconscious beliefs, assumptions, interpretations. All of this is grounds for reflection. Because if the dialogue or the communication brought forth inner resistance, reactivity, we have the ability to pause, go into the pure awareness, and receive the accurate interpretation to assign within and carry on that dialogue, thus investing in a way that will serve you and receive it in the benefit that you will get as you interact with that person again, which is a form of revision, changing how we relate to by reimagining it to happen a different way. This is also done by inner dialogue. Number 3, everyone is doing the best they can with the resources they have available. One of the stories that I would like to share with you is actually on my consulting journey. I had acquired a client many years ago in which, for whatever the reason may be, I had enormous doubt that he was going to produce the success. And interestingly enough, around that time, I came across a quote from Neville Goddard, synchronistically so, that stated, "To the degree that I am self-persuaded, he will become so." Now, upon reflection of that quote, which seemed to show up at the perfect time, I realized there was a spark within me that brought it forth, because we're the ones creating these experiences, because we're revealing, and we're reflecting upon it, and we're understanding what it means. So you could say Neville showed up to reveal it. Now, upon reflection of that, I realized that if I could practice this in this opportunity that I have with this client, even if my own doubts seem to cloud my accurate judgment that he is a representation of my inner interpretations, if I use this as an opportunity and ascend past my own delusions, then I would find even more so a deeper understanding of what he is referring to. And not only will I do that conceptually, but I will do it from an experience standpoint, experientially. And then I will see the relationship between the inner and outer, and a lot of the understandings that I wanted to go deeper into revealing in personal development, and some of the more esoteric information contained within the wisdom of Hermes Trismegistus, for example, would make even more sense to me because they saw things more from a unity perspective. So I had to go into that in mind from a unity perspective so that I could understand it further. As the saying goes, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. So I had to get my mind more ready to receive further understanding because I wanted to also contribute to my own journey and share it with others, thus live the philosophy. So upon meditating on that quote and practicing it, including it in my inner dialogue, investing thoughts in conversations regarding that quote, I observed week by week as this individual would change. His business would grow. He would find more flow. He would find more opportunities. And what had appeared to be a reactive experience in our first conversation within myself turned out to be a joyous conversation in which I encourage him further and further through the inner assumption that he really is doing the best that he can with the resources that he has available. And as a result, I'm observing him connecting the resources together to bring forth more sales, more opportunities in his business, better relationships with his clients, his team members, and so forth. By my own ability to maintain the unity of connection in my mind in relation to him, by stripping away the delusions of the former conversation and aligning with the true conversation of harmony results for him, because that's what I desire to see in him. He asked me to represent him that way in my mind's eye, although he didn't say those words. But that's what people imply when they show up to us asking for help. Hold in our imagination the ideal vision of how we see themselves to be, and we represent them. Now, this was an excellent practice. And after that experience, I seeked even more of these kinds of experiences. To do what? To help others, as well as remove my own delusions and misinterpretations of myself in relation to others. That's why I really like these presuppositions here, because they lay the state of mind down nicely. And you could say hold us accountable to maintain it in relation to people, environment, circumstance, information. In this regard, I like to deal with people because I find, and I mentioned this in my videos that people are mirrors. They reflect what is within ourselves. And so they pose opportunities to see them as the ideal, as well as opportunities to evolve within so we can have a deeper understanding of how this information works and bring forth our success. Another one is the person with the most flexibility and choices will have the most influence on the system. So we're looking at this as the world, reality, the five sensory experience. And we're understanding that the inner world is reflecting as the five sensory experience. And what we want is fluidity of mind. We want to find these nuanced distinctions. We want to see the connects more so. By bringing forth the connections in the mind, it externalizes as the connections in output. Makes sense then how they were able to contribute so much to science, geometry, philosophy, medicine, and so forth. They were forming connections in their mind through their own internal spiritual journey and externalizing it as substance through the process. If you look at them, it looks like they're doing a bunch of stuff. It looks like they're involved with some work, doing a bunch of stuff. What was actually happening was they were going in the internal journey during the process. So they're not getting lost in this outer world, mixing stuff together. The mixing stuff together was first sourced by purification of mind within, and they would harmonize it through the externalization of behavior in relation to those elements. And they were doing it with such vividness and such degree that I'm sure that if many of us had conversations with them, they would reveal some very insightful things. And this was done a long time ago. Alchemy in general can be looked at as an ancient art in which a person seeks to purify the soul, and they even look for immortality. It's happening in parallel with the transmutation of the chemical elements. And they made medicines as a result of it. They had a very deep understanding of the material basis of the world. Now, this was all happening through the internal journey. This is how we bring forth innovation and creativity. This is why I discussed it in the last video. One of the challenges a person might have is the inability to hold two polarizing thoughts in the mind. Thus, they are not able to maintain their flow. They see things as either this way or that way, and they don't understand polarity, which is the varying degrees in between. And thus they find themselves reactive to one thing versus another, such as the example that I gave could have been reactive to this interpretation that I have in relation to my client and said, I don't think that he's going to produce the success, and thus play out the theater as a result of identifying with that thought process. And then what would I have said? I said, oh, look, I proved it to be true. He wasn't going to produce success, not knowing at that time that the degree that I was self-persuaded was going to play out in the theater of that self-persuasion. Again, why these presuppositions are so helpful. So we want more flexibility in our mind. We want to be able to see more potentiality, more perspectives, more potentiality in relation to our journey. And we're doing this simply through the inner conversation, the gift of speech. We say things like, perhaps right now, it doesn't look like I have the success that I desire, but I know that some way, somehow, it's going to be brought forth. I know that success is brought forth in the most nonlinear ways, the most unconventional ways. I may not know the way now, but the how will be revealed to me. All this inner dialogue starts to play out as the theater that reveals it to be so. And then we connect the dots looking backwards with a person like that who produced success, and we say, how did you do it? And then they write a book on it. They write a personal development book or a business book. And what we really want to understand, if we want this to be a true consciousness-based change, everlasting, is that the change happened in consciousness first. And they were going through the internal journey. And it was externalizing as the process, the step-by-step that led. Another one is there's no failure, only feedback. Well, this one, I believe, is very much inspired by alchemy. I can only imagine what it would be like for the ancient alchemists to sit there and just be so submerged in the transmutation process with what would appear as very limited resources. Now, I'm sure if you had a conversation with them, they wouldn't say that. They would probably say something like what we say now in personal development. We have access to infinite resources. We're going to, some way, somehow, find the way to the destination. And everything that we do as a result of our tests provides optimization data. And we will, from there, make a step forward towards our vision. And then another one. There is no resistant client, only inflexible communicators. So I want to tie this really deeply into the story so we can understand the power of these presuppositions. There are no resistant clients, only inflexible communicators. Now, this probably could be considered a pretty radical form of taking responsibility for the people in your life. To see that the people aren't resistant and that we are not flexible enough in our communication. So what do? We don't beat ourselves up. We don't shame ourselves. We persist in an internal dialogue. For example, and let's conclude it with an affirmation that you could use to infuse this as part of your inner dialogue on the way to bringing forth your success. You could say, I respect other people's model of the world, and I'm able to integrate it in a way that brings forth mutual harmony on the way to realizing my vision. As a result, I find more peace, harmony, and inner connection to the divine wisdom and understanding within myself, and I'm able to work with this information to produce success. I realize that the meaning of the communication is the response I get, and the outer world is reflecting the internal assumptions and beliefs, which I have the power to change and reflect accordingly. The resources that are available within my awareness and all that I connect with are infinite, and I'm able to see how this is true every day to a higher degree. As a result, I recognize that changes occur within consciousness to be able to work with the resources that are available to produce it in a tangible form. This brings me a higher degree of flexibility, potentiality, understanding. Through the process, I recognize that any attempt to move forward with an initiative that may appear as failure is only feedback for further purification of mind. This increases my fluidity of mind and flexibility, revealing even more nuanced distinction on how to move forward with my vision. As a result, I understand the hows are revealed. I find myself in deeper peace as I maintain my ideal state of mind in relation to my vision. Through the process, I develop a greater ability to work with the two gifts of speech and mind. I realize that all change that I make in my world is a result of investing in accurate inner speech in relation to my vision, which saturates my mind with the thoughts and images that are in harmony with my vision. I'm able to maintain this each day, and I find myself developing a higher degree of self-confidence, congruence, and conviction. This externalizes as my ability to transmute whatever may appear as obstacle within awareness into opportunity in harmony to my vision. If you would like a copy of this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.